This week at the movies, a teenage misfit puts on a costume and fights crime.
But this is not the usual superhero movie. It's Kick-Ass, co-starring Nicolas Cage.
Tool up, honey bunny. It's time to get bad guys.
Also coming up this week,
we are going to do some damage in this town.
They're a seemingly perfect family with a big secret. Demi Moore and David Duchovny are the Joneses.
And it won this year's Oscar for Best Foreign Film, and it turns out to be a terrific movie. It's called The Secret in Their Eyes.
Plus, we'll take a look at the most overhyped and underappreciated superhero movies.
You're making me angry. Oh, am I?
Do you want to play?
Who are you?
I'm Hit Girl. And that's Big Daddy.
Look, up in the sky, it's an ultra-violent superhero movie. I'm A.O. Scott of the New York Times.
And I'm Michael Phillips of the Chicago Tribune.
Our first movie, Kick-Ass, is a stylish, foul-mouthed movie that wants to have it every which way. It's a parody of the superhero genre, a nerd romance, and a super-violent action picture. A little Spider-Man, a little Superbad, a touch of Kill Bill, and a surplus of pop culture attitude.
Kick-Ass has become the latest internet phenomenon.
This is awesome.
He was actually pretty good.
He should call himself Ass Kick instead.
The hero, played by Aaron Johnson, is a comic book geek named Dave who puts on a tight suit and invents a new crime-fighting alter ego, Kick-Ass. Here, he tries to impress his would-be sweetheart, Katie, played by Lindsay Fonseca.
I'm Kick-Ass. You mail me? Please. Oh, no. Oh, no. Hey, I'm not. Hey, I'm not gonna hurt you, all right? Oh, no, it's me.
Like any good superhero, Kick-Ass acquires a sidekick, who might also be his nemesis. It's Christopher Mintz-Plasse. You may know him as McLovin, but here he goes by the alias Red Mist.
Sat-nav. Got my iPhone so I can check the websites for emergencies when I'm driving around. Got a little bit of mood lighting right there. Rear view camera, no big deal.
There's also another masked vigilante on the scene, a little girl named Mindy, the cute and feisty Chloe Grace Moretz, who's been trained by her dad, Nicolas Cage, nutty as ever, in the use of deadly weapons.
What's the proper name for one of those?
Easy, Balathong. It's Filipino. Ask me nothing.
Excellent, good. The AR-15 was a lighter, smaller caliber version of what design?
Eugene Stoner's Ayrton. Now give me a hard one.
Kick-Ass, directed by Matthew Vaughn and based on a graphic novel by comics legend Mike Miller, is sometimes funny, but it falls victim to the very cliches it's trying to send up. And the extremely bloody violence crosses the line from stylish to sadistic, especially when Chloe Grace Moretz hacks off limbs, blows off heads, and gets punched and shot at by the cartoonish bad guys. I know it's all supposed to be tongue-in-cheek and lots of fun, but frankly, this turned my stomach. I say skip it.
Yeah, I hate to be a nerd, but I say skip it. I started to hate this film at the halfway point, and it's because of this sort of mysterious thing called tone. You know, you can look at all kinds of super violence in a comic book story like this. When you storyboard these things and lay them out that way visually on the page, it's one thing. When you, with no cinematic imagination, lay all this out on screen, especially, as you say, when there's an 11-year-old in the middle of it, I don't know, I'm a middle-aged parent, yes, but I just feel like it is not for me, and I don't think it's for anybody.
Well, I think that's right, because it's not just that, you know, we're kind of prudes and we object to violence and to swearing. I mean, the language, especially coming out of this little girl's mouth, is pretty shocking stuff. Yeah. Two, it's not just that in itself is bad, but you have to provide a context in which it makes sense and provides some kind of entertainment. It's not enough just to have a scene where you have, you know, machine gun rounds going off and people's heads exploding, or you have like a child walk into a room and start swearing at people.
No,
that's not intrinsically entertaining in itself.
And the basic idea,
make a reason for
I agree.
it.
And the basic idea with this picture that, oh, wouldn't it be wild and what a novel idea to have a superhero in the grungy real world? This is the most tired thing. And
it's not even a grungy real world. No, it's a sort of brightly colored cartoon
A film
world.
like The Dark Knight disposed of this sort of, you know, everyday vigilante idea in one moment. A film like The Incredibles got a great comic and satiric mileage out of it. There's no satire in this film. It is deadly serious.
It tries for it,
solemn and gory.
Yes. It just doesn't. It's a big step backwards, I think, for the genre. But now let's talk about a good movie. The Argentine actor Ricardo Darín has a weary angry hangdog air about him that might remind you a little of Al Pacino. He has a saggy, lived-in face and a manner that conveys both melancholy and wit. The Secret in Their Eyes is a wonderful movie from Argentina that was the surprise winner of the Best Foreign Language Film Oscar this year. In it, Darín plays Esposito, an investigator haunted by memories of an unsolved murder. 35 years after the crime, he's writing a novel about it and reliving his crush on Irene, who was his boss at the time.
A mí siempre me parece un delirio esto de las fotos.
Bueno, sí, pero yo creo que es por el tema de las miradas. Calculo que es por eso. Porque vos veías a este pibe mirando a esa mujer, adorándola. Los ojos hablan.
That's the excellent Soledad Villamil as Irene. Smoothly directed by Juan José Campanella, The Secret in Their Eyes moves back and forth between present and past, where we see a younger Esposito following the case with his partner Sandoval, a charming drunk played by the well-known Argentine comedian Guillermo Francella.
Aparece la tipa por la puerta y voy a tener preparado un piropo para que ella se derrita. ¿Cómo es eso?
Lo que pasa, Benjamín, que vos me ves acá vestido de sapo, pero en realidad soy un príncipe encantado.
Estoy pensando qué decirle. Llega ella a la puerta, la veo y me bloqueo. No.
Para mí es más fácil, Benja. Yo no estoy enamorado.
This is a murder mystery with a bittersweet comic undertone and a subtle political edge. It has top-notch performances and a quiet, mischievous sense of style. By all means, see this one.
See it. I loved it.
Terrific movie.
I loved it, and it's got some of the same real sense of life and sort of mid-level bureaucrats just trying to get through and solve a mystery. It reminded me of the Sidney Lumet films from the 70s. Really rich police crime procedurals in a sense, but what you also have in the middle of it, which you alluded to, is this really, really great romance between the two main characters. And I haven't had the kind of old-fashioned rooting interest for two people getting together in a long, long time, and it's beautifully acted.
He plays so well because you see also, I mean, Lumet is I think, a very good point of comparison, because you see the whole world without it kind of making points about society and crime and politics. It's showing you all of this stuff about how this office and the larger society that's embedded in work. So you have this character, Irene, who's this young woman who comes into this job in a position of responsibility, surrounded by these men who are kind of, you know, jerks, and they're always hitting on her and making off-color jokes. And Esposito is the only guy who kind of respects her, but he keeps his distance, and there's something sort of tragic about that because they never connect in the way that they should.
And the movie does take the time to play that relationship out, and yet it's solving kind of a traditional storyline about a cold case and involving a sex crime. You know, a lot of stuff we've seen on any number of episodes of Law and Order, for example. But anybody who's, I would say, a Law and Order fan would adore this picture.
Oh, it's fantastic. And it's about how Argentina is slipping into military dictatorship in the 1970s, where part of it's set. The other part, you know, takes place where it's where the democracy,
the new
has
freedom,
been restored.
absolutely,
And it plays that in just such a subtle and satisfying way. It's a really rich,
and it wraps it up in a little over 2 hours. It's like a mini-series worth of it. It's a real feast. Coming up next, baseball season has just begun, which means we get to review a Little League movie. Does the perfect game succeed in the home stretch?
And later, everyone wants what Demi Moore and David Duchovny have. Here come the Joneses.
What was that?
Just applying myself.
Again! Again!
We take a miracle and make these kids into a real team. Well, sometimes God gives us the ability to make things.
In 1957, a ragtag collection of boys from Monterrey, Mexico, became the first team from outside the U.S. to win the Little League World Series. How did it unfold? According to the movie The Perfect Game, based on the book of the same title, it's as easy as connecting the dots in a connect-the-dots screenplay. First comes the meeting of pitching phenom Angel, played by a young Jake T. Austin, and the factory worker and former Major League hopeful Cesar Faz, played by Clifton Collins Jr.
Wanna have a catch?
No.
Okay, I guess I'll just have to practice every day by myself. Every single day, right here. Every day.
All right, just this once. Then you have to promise me you're gonna pitch somewhere else. Agreed?
After that, the town awaits word from on high regarding the team's official Little League status.
And lastly, Monterrey has just been awarded its very first Little League franchise.
That's Cheech Marin as the priest whose flock gathers around the radio after Mass to listen to the Brooklyn Dodgers. The players crossed the Rio Grande on foot, walked 12 miles through the desert to play their first U.S. game in McAllen, Texas, and then went on to the Little League Championship. All of which is recreated here, but in the most fakey, culturally inauthentic way. If you haven't yet seen last year's baseball movie, Sugar, please, please take the time to see that one. It's excellent, it's very moving, and everything this movie is not. The perfect game, imperfect, skip it. I mean, not just imperfect, but really a fraud, I think. It just doesn't feel...
How do you say Hoosiers in Spanish? Although I like Hoosiers. And
I love it.
I say skip this one, too. And I have a soft spot for the, underdog team with the sort of the coach in search of redemption coming together and making a run for the championship. This one, I felt like from, the second minute of the movie, I knew every single thing that was going to happen, and there was not a single surprise. Even the title of the movie turns out to be a spoiler. Well, if you don't know the history of Little League in the 1950s.
True enough. I think that's the least of the problems. I do think one thing can stand in for sort of the whole fraudulence of the enterprise. Bill Conti's music. Okay, this is the guy who scored the theme to Rocky, who's done some good scores, some lousy ones in his life. But he here is dealing with this really kind of awful mariachi, generic, cliched sound that turns everything into even a falser experience than it is, and it's heartbreaking, Tony, because Clifton Collins Jr., one of the best character actors we have right now.
Yes, and he's, he does what he can, but everything is so square and on the nose and didactic.
So I say see Sugar. If people haven't seen Sugar,
Sugar's a great movie.
Yes, and they should see it.
Okay.
Coming up next, everybody wants to keep up with them. David Duchovny and Demi Moore star in The Joneses.
I have to ensure that my unit is selling their products.
You have a unit?
Next week, Jennifer Lopez in the romantic comedy The Backup Plan.
Will you be my baby daddy?
Plus, Chris Evans and Jeffrey Dean Morgan in The Losers.
Outstanding.
Next week at the movies.
We may not be a normal family.
You think?
But we do have to operate as a team. We have a huge opportunity here. I'd like to see us keep our focus. Our first review is in 30 days.
All right. Gotta sell.
Now we turn to the Joneses, who seem to be an ideal suburban family. They're charming and good-looking, and they also have all the latest cool stuff. Clothes, cars, golf clubs, cell phones. It's like they stepped out of an advertisement. In fact, they are an advertisement. Not a real family at all, but employees of a company practicing an especially insidious form of viral marketing.
You're here to sell a lifestyle, an attitude. If people want you, they'll want what you've got.
Demi Moore and David Duchovny are the fake Mr. and Mrs. Jones. Amber Heard and Ben Hollingsworth are their teenage kids. And this stealth sales team sets about enticing the neighbors to keep up with their fabulous high-end consumer lifestyle. But embodying bourgeois perfection has its stresses, and finding the boundary between appearance and reality can be kind of tricky in this line of work.
I'm your boss. I don't need to be friends.
So this is just business, huh?
Your numbers are looking good.
Thanks, boss.
This part is pretend.
You don't realize the effect you have on people.
The Joneses was directed by Derek Bort, whose background in commercials may account for the movie's cool, burnished glow. But though he's found a great satirical conceit, he can't quite figure out where to go with it. What starts out as a sharp indictment of American materialism goes soft and melodramatic at the end. The Joneses doesn't quite close the sale, but for its intelligence and for Duchovny's sly and soulful performance, I'd say it's worth renting.
No, I was with you until you started liking it toward the end there. I say skip it. I think it sets up a good satiric idea, but this movie, just mystifyingly, is completely toothless. I think the movie spends both as written and sort of as directed. Its concerns are much more about, keeping the audience placated and making you come around and warm up to these people in the end. I don't care about the rooting interest in this
I think the ending is bad because it needs to be cynical, it needs to be more harsh. But I actually think that the direction is very smart, because I think it plunges us into this world where there's all this wonderful high-end stuff, and it just has this kind of glow of wealth and ease, and it kind of seduces the audience the way that the Joneses, the fake Joneses, are seducing the other people in the town. And I think for a while it has a very understated and clever way of playing with the comedy of this. I agree that at the end it sort of can't figure out, well, what happens next? We need to have a story, and that's where it goes wrong.
No, and here's the other thing too. This feels very pre-recession to me. This whole idea that everybody is spending half their life savings on everything these fake families way people are hawking. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it's
going deep into debt and you know, heading toward bankruptcy.
No, well, true. Yes, true. I've read the papers, but
no, I mean in the movie.
Yeah, I'll get there too. But no, it's a satire with no teeth. So there you go.
Well, coming up next, a superhero movie that can't live up to the hype, and one, at least in one of our opinions, that far exceeds it.
You ever see a movie and think to yourself, holy crash, what in the name of Dances with Wolves? That thing was overrated. Or maybe you see a movie that never found much of an audience or even critical respect and think, I liked it, underrated. Well, except for the fact that Tony and I are probably dweebier, we're just like you. And this week, At the Movies begins a new feature called The Over-Under, so that we can get some of these overrated and underrated movies off our chest and get your opinions on the over-under as well. So this week we're going to deal with...
Let's start with superhero movies.
Yes.
We were talking about Kick-Ass, which I think we correctly rated as terrible. But for me, and I know, you know, the email is already starting to flood in before I even say this, and the geek army is assembling to call for my execution.
Pitchforks.
For me, the most overrated superhero movie of recent times is certainly The Dark Knight.
No. Why?
Why? Yes.
Why? Tell me why.
Because I'm not saying that it's a bad movie. We should say overrated is not the same as bad.
Okay, true enough.
But it falls very, very, very short of being the masterpiece that some people have acclaimed it to be. Partly because, I mean, there's a lot of interesting mood and atmosphere, and there is a terrific performance right there by Heath Ledger, who deserved the Oscar he won for it.
Sure did.
But the movie is completely out of control of its themes, cannot figure out who its hero is or what that it wants from him, and just, you know, falls into this kind of soup of angry revenge.
No, I
think it's incoherent.
Well, first of all, it's a lot better than you're giving it credit for. I
may be exaggerating.
A masterpiece? No, I don't think so. But everything you're dinging it for, the kind of unruliness, maybe the too muchness of it, that's what makes it feel alive to me and non-formulaic, and really, like the director Chris Nolan's wrestling with some issues, maybe not entirely successfully, but I think that film is more than just its atmosphere. So
okay, well, now it's your turn to pick one that you think is underrated in the superhero genre.
All right. For my money, both movie versions of The Incredible Hulk I think are underrated. I like Ang Lee's first one, Hulk, and I like the remake starring Edward Norton, The Incredible Hulk. They're both, you know, I think interesting in different ways, but let's talk about the Ang Lee, because that is a film that was really shunned by the comic book audience and the general audience.
And me.
And yourself. Okay, you shun it as well.
I shun it.
Now,
yes.
That film, I think that actually rewards maybe the casual comic book fan like myself more than, you know, the geek you are, obviously. But
I'm not a geek. No.
But I like the father-son storyline in that picture. It held me.
I didn't come here to see you. I came here to see my son. My real son. The one inside of you.
Nick Nolte and oh, come on! I mean, that movie was just and what about? I mean, not that I'm any kind of special effects geek, but I'm sorry. Once you see the monster, he looks like he looks like Gumby on steroids. That thing, it just it looks terrible.
Well, it's better than that. I think Ang Lee.
Oh, it's better than terrible.
Yeah,
okay.
No, it's in fact underrated, I think, and I get something out of both of those Hulk films that I don't get from a lot of other adaptations of, you know, all kinds of Batman, Superman.
Well, I know not to make you mad then. And if you would like to weigh in on your choices for the most over or underrated movies that you've seen, please come to our website at themoviestv.com and tell us what you think. And if you can't decide what to see in theaters, stay tuned for My 3 to See.
A happy woman makes a happy home.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
Closed captioning for At the Movies is sponsored by... Hotel provided by Park Hyatt Chicago, Chicago's award-winning hotel and luxury dining experience, located in the heart of Chicago's Magnificent Mile on Water Tower Square.
In My 3 to See this week, 2 first-rate crime stories from faraway lands and 1 crowd-pleasing melodrama from America's most prolific purveyor of populist kitsch. Of course, I mean Tyler Perry, who puts aside his Medea character in my number 3 pick, a wild blend of comedy and soap opera that overcomes its own flaws and will melt your resistance if you let it. At number 2 is The Square, a nasty, twisty little noir from down under about an ordinary man whose lust and greed lead him down a path of ruin. Murder, arson, all kinds of bad stuff, and a really good movie. Even better is my number 1 pick, this year's foreign language Oscar winner, The Secret in Their Eyes, a whodunit with a heart and a brain, and a fantastic lead performance from Ricardo Darín.
That is a beautiful crime story, a beautiful love story. That's like 2 great movies in one. Really good, really good.
Good one.
That's it for now. We'll leave you with a recap of this week's show. And now you can join the discussion by following us on Twitter and on Facebook. And don't forget to tell us your picks for the over-under.
And join us next week for reviews of The Backup Plan with Jennifer Lopez. And until then, we'll be at the movies.